Everyone, welcome back to another edition to the Point Podcast. Tuesday here, and this week we're back talking Breaking Bad. We're going to talk season 4, episode 1, entitled Box Cutter. And in the second half of the podcast, we are going to dive into the Pacific Division and specifically the California teams. So you got Vegas in there, you have LA, Anaheim, San Jose. We'll even touch on the new expansion team in Seattle. So a lot to dive into today. But my co-host is currently studying for a big exam next week. So we'll be podcasting Wednesday next week. But I want to start off, Shay, by asking, how's the studying going? And confidence level must be 90, 95.
Solid 55, 60 right now. No, not there yet. I have another week, so I'm gonna put her hard this week. It's like I was telling you, I'm off for the rest of the week, so just putting a solid 6-7 hour shift every day at the books, and I should be fine by that. But no, big shout out. I mean, I guess good luck to all the CPA writers out there right now. So they're writing their final exam, which I would have been writing, and I'll write next September. So they write a 3-day exam. It's about 5-6 hours every day, and then you kind of do that for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So shout out to them. It'd be stressful, and it's one of the hardest exams I think in the province, or more importantly in Canada. But so yeah, good luck to them, or if anyone knows them, check in on them and see how they're doing, because they're probably a little stressed.
Yeah, or maybe the move is don't talk to them, because if you know they're stressed, then maybe you can't really get away with that. But somebody like myself, maybe wait till Thursday or hear the results back, and then you're like real positive.
Well, yeah, you don't get the results back until basically Christmas time. So you just kind of finish the exam and you just sit there and kind of wait until Christmas. Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, positive vibes only, as they say.
Exactly.
Positive vibes.
That's what this podcast is all about. It's just positive vibes.
Damn right. Just positive all the time. That's all I do. I never torch teams. I'm not negative. I'm always positive. No, before we start, what'd you think of your Cleveland Browns? They almost had the big upset over the Chiefs over the weekend, came down to the wire.
Yeah, no, it was unfortunate. They had a really good first half, but being a Leafs fan, I'm often, when I don't hype myself up as much as I used to. So I humble myself. No, Mahomes played really, really well, especially in the second half. I saw a lot of good things from Cleveland, though, so I think there should be a contender for their division, and should be another playoff team as long as they just keep things simple.
Yeah, no, I'd feel good about your Browns. I said the other day, if I had to pick a Super Bowl, just boring, I'd pick just using my head, I would say the Super Bowl rematch. If I go outside the box and I think about it, I would pick the Rams and the Browns. So Baker played great. The team looked good. They just got to learn how to finish. And, they got 16 more games to figure that out before the playoffs. And their division is tough, but Baltimore didn't look great last night. So that bodes well for them going forward. Just to set the stage here at Breaking Bad, we were off last week. My fault. I had a busy week and I ran out of time. We saw season 3 cap off with Walter getting picked up by Victor, brought to the lab where he's sitting with Mike, and they're preparing to kill him because he's killed Gus's men. Him and Jessie are basically loose ends. But he calls Jessie and he informs them that he has to go kill Gale, who is the new chemist that Gus wants to run the lab. We cap it off with Jesse's at his door, gun in his head, right to his face. And when the scene cuts to black, we hear the gunshot. And, we don't know what happened, Shay, but it basically the assumption is that Jesse killed Gale.
Yeah, we can only assume, and it's a good way to finish off the season, I think, because it leaves a lot of mystery in like what's going to happen with Walter. They're going to keep him alive. Is it going to be able to save him? So yeah, it makes for a great opening to season 4, and I love the transition of you kind of end with Gale and you're going to start with Gale by I guess getting the lab ready. Pardon.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is great by Vince Gilligan, where we start the season off with Gale and Victor. Oddly, opening up lab equipment with a box cutter, the title of the episode, which we'll get to. But they're opening it up. Gale's like a kid in a candy store. He's like in Bulk Barn when we were 4 years old, Shay, just picking up Smarties to go to the movie theater. He's looking at everything. He loves it. And Gustavo comes down and he says, like, this is awesome. Like, you know, I'm a good, and he kind of says, I'm a good chemist, but like a genius should be in here. Like, this is a huge investment. And they actually start talking about the blue product that we know Walter has been making.
Yeah, it's a little comparison. And it seems like at this point in time, it doesn't look like Gus has even got the thought of hiring Walter.
Mm-hmm.
It's more, okay, well, we're going to give you this brand new lab and we're going to get you to make something as close. Gale says, you know, I can guarantee you a 96% rating, a 96% match. But the stuff that I guess the competitors will say, or the people we're going against, is 99%, which is what Walter and Jessie were producing.
Right. And Gus says that's okay. Yeah, I'm fine with that number. But Gale pushes back, which is weird from Gale because he's such a timid guy. But he kind of says, you should really hire this guy. Like, I don't know what's wrong with him, but he deserves to cook in a lab like this. And ultimately, we want to have the best product available.
Yeah, funny how Vince Stir, he's the one who pushes it and ultimately ends up being the one sacrificed so that Walter could be able to remain cooking there.
Right, yeah, sort of poetic justice in that sense. So then we pan to Jessie crying, really in tears. We see that he has shot Gale right through the head. The bullet actually went through him and hit a teapot in Gale's apartment. So there's tea going down the floor. And we just hear a group of neighbors, Jessie is now gone, but a group of neighbors calling the police and basically saying, we don't know. They don't know who killed him, but he's dead. He's dead. He's on the ground. And in comes Victor to the apartment.
Yes, as we know, Victor, as soon as Walter said, you know, you better go check on your boy, basically saying, you know, we're going to kill Gale. Mm-hmm. Victor bolts. He runs, drives to the apartment right away, knows the thing, and takes a look inside. And, you know, the neighbors are like, you shouldn't be in there because obviously it's a crime scene now. Someone just got shot. Victor kind of goes in, makes sure he's dead, and then kind of looks around, and then that's it. He just leaves. And who does he see in the parking lot, kind of in his own world, but Jessie? And, you know, automatically he runs up to him, guns blazing, and basically just says, me and you are going to the lab.
Yeah, so he hops in the passenger seat. He says drive, and they go to the lab. And they get there. He sits Jessie next to Walter. Jessie, just for point of reference, has not said a word yet. He is not. He's hardly looked up. When he gets close to Walter, Walter's kind of talking to him. He doesn't respond. And Victor tells Mike that Gale's dead. And you know, Mike's like, oh, shit. Like, this is a problem. And Mike, being Mike, said, did you clean it? And he said, no, I couldn't. There was people there. And he reluctantly tells Mike that people saw him at the scene.
Which, well, it can tie into something. Obviously, even if he's not the killer, you know, he knows something that most people wouldn't. So it does kind of make him a loose end in the sense that he was spotted somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. He probably should have just looked in, saw the crime scene, and then, you know, or looked at the steps or something so that the neighbors couldn't see him. Just in point of reference, I guess, from last time we would have spoke, Jessie was against killing Gale, highly against it, thought, you know, why are we going to take away, like, you should just go to the cops, Mr. White, you know, why are we going to take away a civilian's life? And now he's kind of in shambles because I believe this is the first person that Jessie has killed, really. I mean, we've seen Walter kill, a bundle of people, but Jessie really hasn't took that next step into becoming the bad guy, we'll say.
Yeah, no, he hasn't. He didn't want to, like you said. He's never. The only people we saw him really that he wanted to kill were the two henchmen of Gus. But I'm not sure he would have had the courage to do it, or he was walking into a trap. So Mike calls Gus, and that kind of sets a little reprieve from them. We pivot to Marie comes to Skylar's. We haven't seen Marie and Hank in a few episodes. We do see them briefly here. And she drops off a check for Hank's physiotherapy. He's still in his hospital bed at home, but he can hardly walk, and it's not great for Hank. But she hands him a check, and then she kind of mentions you and Walt getting back together, like a little rendezvous last night. And Marie's like, Skylar's like, what do you mean? And Victor basically told Walter to get the hell in the car the night before, and Walter's Aztec is still in the driveway.
Yeah, so he kind of looks in, and I didn't know why she did this at first, but obviously explain later. She gets in the Aztec and kind of just drives it down the street so that it doesn't look like, that he was ever there if someone were to drive by. Mm-hmm. But this does cause some, confusion between Marie and someone else who were to go by and think, oh, they might be back together now. If you can remember, they kind of had their arrangement where she's going to be the, I'd say, bookkeeper / money launderer, and he's able to come home 3 nights a week. Mm-hmm. I forget what it was. So they kind of have this little arrangement, but clearly she has no idea where Walter is, and she starts to panic.
Yeah, and we see later she calls Saul, and this is kind of funny because she calls Saul's office. He's got this huge black man who we learned his name is Huel, but that wasn't said in this episode. But he's just like Hall's bodyguard. He doesn't say much, but he's very funny. Huel Babineau, and his receptionist comes in to kind of check on him, and he's checking his entire office for basically a wiretap or a bug in layman's terms.
Yeah, he's highly paranoid. If you can remember at the very last episode, Mike, the PI who works for Gus, kind of turned on Saul a little bit, kind of to get Jesse's address from him. So now he's all paranoid that he's going to get caught and that they're onto him. So he's more or less getting ready to get the hell out of there because he thinks his life's in danger.
Yeah, so you're right. He's got his new bodyguard. He actually asked him later in the episode if he has a passport. But Skylar calls and says, "Have you heard from Walt? Like, where is he?" And he goes, Saul being Saul, "No, he's fine. Like, you're being a wife. You're overthinking it. Like, nothing's wrong." And she goes, "Well, his car's here. Like, nobody knows where he is. He's not answering his phone." And he basically just shoos her away and doesn't give her anything.
Yeah, I think at this point Saul is concerned with number one, and that's being himself, trying to get out of a bad situation here. He thinks that all the heat that Jessie and Walter kind of brought on themselves is going to get himself burned. So he's kind of getting ready to leave. He's going to take his cash and do what he will, and he's bringing Huel with him.
Yeah, he's bringing Huel with him. Yeah. So Skylar then drives over to Walter's apartment with Holly, and she calls a locksmith because it's locked, but she can't get in. The locksmith won't open the door for her because her name is not on the property. They are not divorced, but they're separated. It's under Walter's name, so she can't get in. But she uses the power of persuasion. She starts basically crying. You got Holly, who's in her arms, but she just starts bawling. She hands Holly to him because she's sort of having this panic attack moment, and the locksmith caves and lets them in.
Yeah, which is pretty illegal, but it does help, I guess. And we can see that Skylar was concerned enough to go to illegal actions to help Walter, so she still does care for him a little bit in that sense. And she gets in there. I kind of forget what she does when she gets in there. I think she just kind of more or less just snoops around trying to get a sense of where he could be.
Yeah, she kind of sees that he had like a glass of juice out, and she looks in his drawers for any kind of hint. He does have that eyeball in one of his drawers, which she kind of looks at with big eyes, but there's no real clue, and she's kind of left with a dead end saying, okay, I know just as much as I did an hour ago.
Yeah, well, and at this point even though we haven't spoke about it since, Walter and Jessie kind of remain in the majority of this episode kind of at the lab and basically just on waiting. They're not allowed to cook. At one point they're like, we're gonna miss our cooking time. So do you want us just to cook now and we can solve this later? And they're like, no. Victor, out of all people, kind of says, we don't need you, and he just kind of takes it on his own to start cooking the batch that they were supposed to.
Yeah. So it's like 10 to 9 in the morning, and Victor just starts getting up, and Walter is just shocked, first of all, and then he gets petty. He's like, oh, he's gonna forget the aluminum. Oh, look at him, idiot! He's gonna forget the aluminum. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And Victor remembers, and he puts it in, and he's cooking, and Walt's just like telling him, like, no, like, Mike, like, you got to let me cook, not this idiot here. Like, this guy is not a good cook. And Victor kind of throws it back. He goes, I don't need you. Like, I know how to cook. I can make just as good meth as you. And it pissed him off for sure.
Which is also problematic because that's the whole reason why they killed Gale. Because if they don't have someone to, I guess, get the perfect levels that Walter can get, well, then they needed to keep him around, and that's basically why he's alive. But here's Victor, who's been watching them for the last number of cooks with Gale, so he's kind of got a gist of what they're supposed to be doing. But of course, he's not a chemist, so he doesn't really have a clue when it comes down to the exact sciences. Right.
Yeah. Walter starts screaming at him. Yeah, if there's a contamination here, you won't know it. You don't know the facts. And Victor just like at one point grabs for his gun and, Mike's like, calm down. But in the midst of this, in walks Gus. And this scene, I think, is so well acted. And it's because Gus in this entire scene does not say one word until the very end, to literally the last second. But it's probably a 10-minute scene, Shay, where he says literally nothing.
Yeah, he's just an intimidating force to be reckoned with. He just kind of comes in. He's got that, I don't even know what to call it. It's like a look of absolute disgust mixed with like just pure disappointment. And, he kind of comes in, and everyone, obviously because of his, his power and his nature, everyone just kind of turns to him, and it's like Walter just starts blabbering. Jesse's still in this state where I don't really think he's comprehended what he did by killing Gale, but Walter's like, Gus, listen, like, you need us around. You need me and Jessie now to cook. You'll lose millions of dollars. And he just kind of keeps rambling because I really think he doesn't know what to say or do. And he doesn't know what Gus is going to do at this point.
Yeah. He's just, you need us. Like, Gale's gone. I like Gale, but I'll pick me and Jessie over Gale any day of the week. And if you kill Jessie, you don't got me. So you need us. And Victor's like, you don't need them. These idiots. But throughout this, he just goes to the back of the lab and he's such an eloquent guy. He puts his shirt on a hanger. Then he puts his tie on a hanger, puts his nice business attire on a hanger, and he starts putting on the orange kind of suit fit for the lab, is the lab scrubs, puts on boots. And, the initial thing you're thinking, Shay, is he's going to kill Walter and Jessie here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The only reason he's not like he's going to get up and start cooking with Victor. You know what I mean? So like, obviously his next move is he's going to pull out the old axe, like American Psycho, shout out Christian Bale, and, just start chopping these guys to pieces. But like you said, he's not saying a word. So he's doing all this stuff without really giving us any intention of what he wants. But to a viewer, you're thinking, okay, well, he's getting ready to end these guys' lives. Even you can even see Mike has a bit of confusion on his face, because even though he's standing behind Walter and Jessie, he's kind of looking at Gus like, what the hell is going on here?
Right. So he gets all the attire changed. He's in the suit and he starts going through drawers, and he's looking. We don't really know what he's looking for, but eventually the camera pans on a box cutter, and he walks over. And he just stands there looking at Walter and Jessie. And Walter continues to plead with him. No, you can't do this. Like, come on, please. And As he's pleading, Gus grabs the box cutter, flicks it up like you do. He grabs Victor and slices his throat.
Gruesome scene.
Yeah.
Hard to watch if you had a light stomach. It would be not easy, because not only does he cuts his throat, well, he also holds him there.
Yeah.
And basically kind of like, I would say, flaunting it to Walter, and he's doing it, and the blood getting all over Walter and Jessie, and it's really kind of like a message sent to them. I mean, you can interpret it how you can, but I more or less thought, this is my right hand man, and I'm willing to let him go. What do you think I'm willing to do to you?
Right. Yeah. It serves so many purposes. I totally agree. It sent a message because it's right in their face. The blood's dripping on them, and it's gruesome. Like, he could have killed a guy he respected a lot easier than that. You could have just shot him in the head. It's over. He let him bleed out for a while, and and it's, like you say, it's pretty graphic. And Mike didn't know either. Mike, the other thing is Mike is just completely shocked. Clearly, I wouldn't say Mike and Victor are friends, but Mike had a good working relationship with Victor where they understood each other, and they just were good. They were just good worker bees.
Yeah, and when you think about it, I mean, Mike is close with Gus, but Victor was also very close with Gus. So it's like, if you're willing to do that to one guy, you must be willing to do it to me as well. And I also, you can also take it as, we don't accept, or Gus, I guess, doesn't accept shortcomings, because Victor was doing his job well. Gale wouldn't have died in the first place. So like, it's basically kind of also saying, don't disappoint, because this is kind of the end result of what happens.
Right. Yeah. Agreed. And also, Victor was at the scene, so they would have witnesses that would have probably obviously seen him there, and they would have told cops in their statement what he looks like, things like that. That could be tied back to Gus, and that leads to more problems down the road. So he bleeds out, and then he just basically, he's holding the shirt of Victor, and he just throws his head to the ground. He's about an inch away from Walter's feet. You just see the blood pour out, like just coming real close to Walter. And Walter's just sitting there shocked, looking at him. But Gus, again, says nothing. Just walks about an inch, drops the box cutter on the ground, and then starts to go clean himself up.
Yeah, it was like another day in the office. Really just kind of, goes to the showers, goes back, puts his normal business clothes on, and proceeds to go up the stairs like it was just any old day in the office. Yeah,
so he cleans himself up, puts the tie back on, everything, just crazy. Mike didn't even move through all this. He's just kind of standing there, and as he's at the top of the stairs, he's about to leave. But before he does a quick U-turn. He looks back and he says, well, get back to work, and leaves the lab.
Unbelievable. It's a great scene by him. It's a great way to, I think, introduce like a new season and really show what Gus is capable of doing. He's clearly got a little bit of a madman in him. But we soon learned his rise to power. Obviously took a lot of sacrifices from his own. So it was really, really good. It's well done for someone who doesn't have to say anything. He also said a million things at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. He had great just visualization. Like you said, when he was about to dive, the stare he had at Walter, he did not leave. The eye contact was consistent, and he just basically said, "This is you. This next time, this is you. Like this, I'm not." And so then Walt and Jessie, they've done this before, which is funny, but they have to clean up the dead body. We see them get the white bin. They drag Victor's body over. They, feet first, and Mike has to help them for half a second. And then they grab the hydrochloric acid, which Jessie used in a tub once, which he learned his lesson. Now they're using the bin that Walter wanted to use originally. And Mike says, you sure that's going to work? And Jessie Bubson, trust us, this will work.
A little shout out to season 1, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And it's pretty disgusting because they're like mopping the floor with all the blood, and then you see the bucket and like Victor's remains are getting, destroyed from the
Just
acid.
it's almost like he's swishing around in that
Yeah.
bucket like it was no big deal. And another thing is, it's almost like he was never there. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they put him on a truck. They label his bin. They put him on the truck and basically send him to the cleaners, and that's it. Like that was his life, and that's just kind of like, even though you were right hand man to me, you kind of mean nothing at the same time if you're gonna make mistakes.
Right. Yeah. It's not like they're burying him in even the desert. Like he's nothing. Like his family will know nothing about him. Like he's just off the earth, so he discarded. So, tough day. Jesse's killed a person. You're in a lab. You just seen somebody get executed in one of the most brutal ways ever. Why not Jesse and Walt? Why not go out for breakfast? That makes a ton of sense. And they're at this diner. They're both wearing Kenny. Is it Kenny Loggins? Is that what they're wearing?
Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Rogers. I knew it was something like that. Yeah. T-shirts and basically track pants. But Jesse gets a big old feed of pancakes.
Yeah, and it's like, and they have this conversation, and Walter says, what do we, what's our move? What do we do now? Clearly, we're not safe. But Jesse kind of understands. He understands the assignment, and he says, that was a message. That could have been us. We just had to work and keep our head down, and it's very different. Walter's kind of on his hind legs, thinking, okay, we got to watch out because our asses could be on fire. But Jesse's more like, well, we got served our little slap, and now we just kind of have to keep being busy bees until whatever else happens.
Right. Yeah. And Walt's like, well, is he gonna get another cook, and then he's gonna kill us? And he says, where's he gonna find another cook? The only people he hires are people he trusts, and he doesn't have anybody like that anymore. Victor's dead. Gale's dead. He's basically forced to use us right now, and we should just keep working. And like you said, but he even says, if I'm not dead, I'm happy right now. And that's kind of the motto that Jesse has.
Yeah, exactly. And really sets it up for the season. Like they're really they're working for someone who wants to kill them but can't kill them. And that's the whole vibe of what season 4 is like. But yeah, this episode's so good. I think there's also a little bit of Hank that we might have missed, but really nothing maybe too entailed. He's obsessed with fossils now. Yeah. So he bids on fossils, and he's kind of just a grouch, kind of like he was at the end of season 3, kind of pissed off because he can't do much, and Marie's helping him.
Yeah, she got to use the old bedpan in the episode, which is tough. But yeah, Hank's being quite a dick, to put it lightly. He's not very nice to Marie, and just bidding on his stupid minerals and just living life. Walking 16 steps for like every hour or something. Like it's still very early in the rehab process for Hank. But we do end the episode with a montage of Gale's apartment, and we see his lab notes book. And it doesn't tell us everything, but we do know that Walter's name, well, not Walter specifically, but that his initials are in said book.
So it gives them a little clue, and it's a great way to end the episode, because it's like, the police are going to be on to him now. They have their recipe, which I think is kind of a big thing because it helps them out. But in the same sense, now they kind of have ties to someone who might have been related to, I guess, the great Heisenberg.
Right. So yeah, they do have one clue if they can figure that out, and it kind of sets up the rest of the season as well, because we'll see the DEA really start to push hard against Heisenberg and the rest of them, trying to find out who's the culprit of all this meth being cooked. But yeah, great start to season 4, and big themes of this season are Jesse dealing with the death of Gale and processing that or not processing it, and then Walter. he's usually on the defense. He's definitely more of an offensive player this season when it comes to proactive moves to escape Gustavo Fring.
Yeah, we'll see that. He's under a microscope, but he does attempt some things, and we'll leave it at that. But I know, really, really good. Do you have a preference on between season 3 and season 4? Yeah, I mean, I know rewatch and it's kind of recency bias, but season 3 was just so good with so many twists and turns,
right,
and new characters being added to the mix. But do you think season 4 is something to look forward to?
Definitely something to look forward to. I think it's I think there's a few episodes that are some of my favorite in the whole show. I think the Don Eladio episode is very good. A couple more that I'm thinking of with Hank kind of getting back in the mix, but I don't know if it's as good as season 3, but I don't think it's very good. Season 3 is the high bar. I think it's the best season of the show.
Yeah. I just some great watches, and I'm glued to the screen every time I put it on. I'm sure I will for season 4 as well, as everything's kind of coming back to me, and I'm like, oh yeah, like this happens. Oh, okay, this is why.
There's some interesting stuff with Skylar too in this season. And Saul gets more integrated, which I like. So there are some good things that you meet Huel and Bill Burr is in this season. Which he's kind of funny too. So the Huel and him together is a good little mix. But there's definitely some good elements about season 4 as well.
No, I agree.
Yeah, so that's going to do it for our Breaking Bad coverage. We'll be back to a normal schedule next Wednesday. We'll talk about episodes 2 and 3. So we'll do that next week after Shay crushes his exam next Tuesday. So we'll hear back from him, 100% confidence level, and it'll just be straight crushing it, as the kids say. But let's get to the Pacific Division of the NHL offseason. NHL training camps actually open on Monday, which is crazy to think. Season starts October 12th with the Tampa Bay Lightning raising their second straight banner against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then the nightcap is the Seattle Kraken opening up their franchise against the Vegas Golden Knights at T-Mobile in Las Vegas. So let's start at the top. From last year, Vegas was the top team in this division. They get to a conference final, get upset by Montreal, but a lot of teams did last year when Montreal went on that improbable run. Looking at their off-season, Shay, what's the biggest change in Vegas and how they're looking heading into the 2021-2022 season?
Yeah, no doubt. Marc-Andre, losing him and losing that tandem is going to be huge. I still think Leonard is a great goalie. But I think Fleury was just that guy that, everyone knew there when he was the big name, you know what I mean? In 2018, when they got that team going, it was like, okay, we have Marc-Andre Fleury, a guy who's, won Stanley Cups before, and he's been a number 1 goalie for quite a while in this league. So losing him is going to be huge, but, it kind of gives some relief to, I think, Peter DeBoer, who's been battling season after season. Oh, who do I put in the playoffs? Fleury or Leonard? Well, now you don't have to worry about that. It's Leonard's your choice, and you're just gonna have to go with him. What are your thoughts? What do you think the?
Yeah, I didn't like that they didn't tell him that he was. I'll agree with that, but I'm not like most people. I think it was the correct move. He had $7 million left for this year. That's a lot of money. And yes, I get it. He won the Vezina Trophy last year. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a great goalie. But it was just time, And I think you sign Leonard long term, and you got to sink or swim with that decision. You weren't going to move on from Leonard, and Fleury deserved more respect from that trade. But it was clear teams like Marc-Andre Fleury, but they gave up basically nothing for him. Chicago, like they gave up, they wanted him, but you're not getting much in return from Marc-Andre Fleury because of that cap hit and age and things. I'm sure Chicago's banking on him being a star goalie again this year, but Leonard, and then you sign old Laurent Brossoit. He's a backup, and he's fine. He's been good in Winnipeg. He was good in LA before that, so he's just a solid backup goaltender. But I look at their team. They didn't lose anything major. I mean, Nosek went to Boston. Ryan Reeves went to New York. Cody Glass has since departed. Nick Holden is gone. But I still think they have the best team in the division by a significant margin.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And yeah, those names are gone, but none of those names, maybe besides Revo was, I'd say, key piece and, a guy who's maybe been there since the start. And you also think about losing Cody Glass. Well, they gained Nolan Patrick. And a lot of people see a big Band-Aid beside Nolan Patrick's name, which is 100% valid. He's, I don't know if he's had a full healthy season in the NHL yet, but maybe he walks into like a third line center role or, helps contribute on their bottom six a little bit, because he's a pretty decent playmaker and he's pretty decent around the net. I'm just kind of waiting for him to, spur out there. I remember like even in his draft, he was taken second overall. So obviously he had high expectations of what he was going to become. Those have since shrunk forward. Philadelphia left him. And then obviously Nashville didn't think they'd have much use for him. So that's why they dished him over there.
Yeah, he's an interesting story, interesting player to watch this year because we have seen players get a new location, get a new opportunity, and maybe they will thrive. Yeah, I'm interested to see. The one thing I look at Vegas that they didn't address, and Patrick can play the center ice position, but he's more of a winger. They didn't address the center ice position.
No.
That was really a huge part of the problem in the playoffs where they had to put Alex Tuch at center. Alex Tuch's not a center. He's a right winger. Yeah, he can fly, but that's not his natural position. That you hurt players by putting them in a bad position. And they have a loaded team. Their back end is better, almost better. You could make it argument is better than anybody in the NHL. With Tampa and they're right there. I just look at their center ice depth, and I don't think they have a number one center. Bill Carlson's good. He's not a number one center. Chandler Stevenson, very good player. He's not a number one center iceman. And I think that's a big reason why they lost to Montreal is this. They didn't have a big line to produce when they needed them to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the name is still out there, regardless of needing surgery or not. Imagine a team like this with Jack Eichel. And you're thinking, how can they sway that? $10 million cap hit. But if they were to move some pieces around, maybe Wild Bill and maybe, like I said, Riley Smith goes the other way, well, that opens up room plus some picks. But, it's hard to gain a whole bunch without losing everything you got at the same time. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think they've got some depth now. And if they do grab a guy like Eichel or even maybe just a big name at center, we talked about this last time we spoke, maybe Monahan comes over, some guy that they could use just down the center who's going to be effective in the playoffs.
Yeah. It's definitely a possibility. Good luck. But,
with Eichel or Monahan?
Monahan.
I don't expect that one, but you're right. Just thinking about needing a centerman, like they don't really have, to me, they don't even have a number one centerman. They just kind of have a 2 and 3.
Yeah. And that's the only fault I see in this team. I like their goalie. Their back end speaks for itself. You got Pietrangelo and Theodore and Martinez, and they're loaded back there. But I look at the center ice and I just say Stone's great. Pacioretty can still score goals, but who's going to go in the corner and feed them the puck? And that's kind of where I lose a little bit of faith in this team. Anaheim, they're in the midst of a transition. They had an off season where they brought back Ryan Getzlaf on a short-term deal. There was rumors he'd leave. They didn't lose much, to be fair. Ryan Miller retired and David Backes retired. They drafted McTavish with Mason McTavish, 3rd overall. So they're probably hoping he can step in and play right away. They do have Trevor Zegras, who is a lot of fun to watch. They also have some other really intriguing young player. Max Comtois is a guy I love to watch. I think he's already a good player. I think he can be even better than he is right now. But they got some bad contracts too, Shay. Shattenkirk, Henrique. Anaheim, any big expectations for them this season?
No, if they do better than we'll say the two cracker teams in this division being Arizona and I'd say the Kings.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a successful season. You're going to let your young guys grow. You're going to let Zegras, Jamie Drysdale grow.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's time for them to kind of step up. But I do see these guys being, after maybe getting rid of some of these contracts, a playoff spot in at least a few years, don't you?
Yeah, I think what would be big is if they could get the aforementioned Jack Eichel.
Yeah, which is on the table and which has been talked about.
They got the money to do it. And especially after this year, Henrique comes off. Shattenkirk, I believe, has a year left. I don't know why the hell they signed him to that contract, but that's beyond me. Yeah, that's beyond me.
They really do need I think someone in their decor, and I know Drysdale. I just mentioned Drysdale, but they do need someone else to spark up this decor. I know you really love Josh Manson. Cam Fowler, he's been there. I don't think he's that guy.
No,
he doesn't seem to be. Hampus Lindholm, they've waited on him. Kind of gave up Fedor in a sense to keep him. Which, I mean, if you're looking at that now,
oh my God,
the Ducks fan must be fuming because that's just looking ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know how he still has a job, Terry Murray. I don't know. You kept Vatanen and Fowler and Lindholm to get rid of Fedor.
Yeah.
That's a fireable offense. I don't know how to say it any night. I mean, the guy is going to be on Canada's Olympic team. He's that good. I mean, that's just where it is right now. But yeah, if they could get Eichel this season, even if Eichel misses time for surgery, if you can gel down the stretch, at least be a competitive team. I mean, they have one of the top 10 best goalies in the league, in my opinion, and John Gibson.
Yeah, I highly agree with that. Gibson, and a lot of people are saying get rid of Gibson because they feel like it's a waste, but he must be only 26, 27.
Yeah.
So he still has a lot of great years to play. If you're Anaheim, I'm keeping him as long as you can. As long as he's happy, you keep him as long as you can. Maybe do acquire Eichel, and in a few years you can be kind of that playoff team again they once were in the 2016, 2017.
I totally agree. There's no way I'm trading Gibson because you get rid of him and then you're finally good and you don't have a goalie. So
and they're so hard to find, right?
Absolutely.
You could spend years trying to find a half decent goalie. If you're looking at Dallas, you're thinking, well, maybe things would have changed for Dallas if not digging on Khudobin. I thought he had a great playoff run, but if you actually had a Ben Bishop who was healthy, but that's so rare to find now, a healthy and quality goalie.
Yeah, you need a lot of luck, but for Anaheim, they have the Drysdale's very good. Zegras, I think, is just hitting the ceiling of what he can do. You got Comtois, who I think can be a top 6 forward. Getzlaf's more of a third, fourth line guy, but I still think he's valuable to have there because he's been there, done that, and he'll keep
with that many young guys too, right, Juggy? I mean, you got to have a guy that's been there, been to the very top of the mountain to kind of tell those old war stories to inspire them for things to come, right?
Yeah, completely. And you get Shattenkirk and Getzlaf, 2 bald guys. They've been around the block. They both won cups. So Anaheim. We'll talk about the other teams. Let's go to San Jose. Yes, Jesus. They talk about bad contracts, which we'll get to in a minute. But they had an interesting offseason. They didn't re-sign Patrick Marleau yet, which applause. They let Ryan Donato walk. Marcus Sorensen, Martin Jones was bought out. Big surprise there. And they brought in Nick Bonino, a good veteran forward who's played in a lot of Stanley Cup games. Optimus Rhyme, your boy, James Reimer, came over from Carolina, former Maple Leaf. And Andrew Cogliano, another guy who's been in the war. Another veteran guy is on the team. But should I look at this roster? And boy, are they ever old.
You're not wrong, and they're not bringing in any new good young life because they just don't have the room. I mean, they can't squeeze in. I'm blanking on examples here, but a good young player because they just don't have the cap.
No,
and the Sharks are the least of this division because they spent so much money developing this great blue line, and you got just old stinkers now in the back there who really are just not going to contribute. I mean, you've seen Brent Burns last year. He wasn't that great. Vlasic is kind of just a shell of what he was.
Yeah.
And I mean, your favorite player, Eric Carlson. I mean, I don't even know where we start with him.
Yeah. You look at it, Evander Kane, he's most known for gambling and cheating on his wife lately and potentially fixing games. So that's great. Brent Burns. Everybody loves Brent Burns. Kit Kat commercials. I saw it 100,000 times, get sick of it. But, he's a fun personality, the beard, the hair, whatever. But it's a fast game, Shay, as you know, and he's not the quickest guy. And it's only getting faster and he's only getting slower. Eric Carlson, and this will hurt Dawson's feelings, but he was great in Ottawa. Don't get me wrong, he was great. I don't think he was as good as people think, but he was very good. But the fact that they acquired him when they did, when he was on the downturn of his career, and then signed him to 7 years at $11 million, that was one of these stupid. I remember we talked about it because I think we were still at apartment 49 when that contract came in. And I remember telling you this is going to be one of the worst contracts in hockey in about 5 minutes, and it has been.
You're right. Yeah.
You mentioned Vlasic. Even Couture is not what he used to be, and he's still got a few years left and a big ticket there as well.
Yeah, well, what are your thoughts on the comments of Thomas Hertl saying that if Evander Kane's there opening day, that he plans on not playing? Do you think that'll go through, or do you think he'll keep his word on that? I mean, let's just be honest. Evander Kane must be a poison at this point because he's been in so many locker rooms and it's not worked out anywhere. Yeah,
eventually it's not somebody else's fault, right? Like in Buffalo, okay, maybe you can say, okay, Buffalo's a shitty situation. And Ryan O'Reilly nearly quit hockey because he was in Buffalo. But Winnipeg, like, pretty solid organization. You don't hear a lot of bad things about Winnipeg. Even Laine didn't complain that much about Winnipeg on his way out. If I'm San Jose, you seriously got to consider terminating his contract. We've seen what the Rangers did with D'Angelo. That's completely different reason. I'm not saying Evander Kane's, racial or, it has anything to do with politics, but he is more of a problem than a solution right now when it comes to winning hockey games. And I'd much rather have Thomas Hertl than Evander Kane. I mean, just when it comes to brass tacks.
Oh, 100%. I mean,
Hertl might be the best forward.
He's probably the most liked. He's supposed to be a really, really good guy, where Evander Kane's kind of, when you bring in all this drama around you, it becomes less and less about the team, even if you're not the person bringing in the drama, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, why are you going to be around? Why are you going to be one around that if you can play? Hertl's on the last year of his deal. What's stopping him from going? No, I want to play for a contender. Get me the hell out of here.
Right.
And right now, he's got no excuse to. He's going to play for a dump team, and he's going to play with Evander Kane, who he, aforementioned, he hates.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of a pending UFA, he would be an interesting trade deadline acquisition for a team that really wanted to go all in.
Looking for
anyone that thinks they can win the cup, that's the guy I would have high on my list.
Yeah, maybe we just mentioned it. Well, maybe he skips hopping a beat over to Nevada and joins, them if they can make the money work. If
right,
there seems to be a big thing now with a third team taking on the cap, cap space, the cap money. Well, the other team kind of just pays them with picks or whatever else, prospects, and takes on the player.
But yeah, I just looked through this roster and I don't see a lot coming that would excite me. They got Aiden Hill and Reimer in net. That's a recipe to lose a lot of games. And Reimer will play hard like he always does, and he'll do his salute when he wins, but there won't be many of those this year. Maybe you'll get a few more because his division's so terrible. But yeah, I don't love the Sharks' outlook. And to give them a little bit of I think that you got to blame them for the Carlson deal. I think that was a mistake, but at least they were competitive for like a decade, Shay. They were right in the fight for a decade. They couldn't get their cup, but to give them some credit, they were battling every year, and they were in the conference final twice of the last 5 years are in a Stanley Cup playing Pittsburgh. They fought hard.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about this last time. When do you pull the trigger? Like, you got to be looking at this team thinking, okay, we're not going to compete, even in the crappiest division in the league. We're not going to compete with Las Vegas. We're not going to compete with Colorado if we happen to get by Las Vegas. So when you kind of blow it up and say, okay, we got to start trading some assets here to start thinking about the future. And you can't get rid of half the blue line because no one's going to take those contracts.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's taking Vlasic. I think you'd agree with me there. Nobody's taking Carlson. Like, Carlson could demand a trade. That doesn't mean it's happening because nobody wants him. Like, Burns would probably be the best. I still don't think many teams would take him.
Not without retaining some cap. You had to retain at least 2-3 million cap.
Yeah, I think you need to retain half of it.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because, like you said, Brent Burns is a good personality and he seems like a good teammate. And obviously, he's done a lot of really good things. He won a Norris there in San Jose, so he's been doing a lot of great things. But it's one of those contracts where that then at the end of it, it's probably going to go spiraling downhill because of age and the way he plays, really.
Right. We did our Seattle expansion draft way back when. Since then, they did some of what we wanted them to do. Some they went outside the board, but they got their team now. It's set. They're playing opening night, like I mentioned, against Vegas. What do you make of what Seattle did as a whole?
I think they're going to be surprisingly competitive. I know you didn't like the Jaden Schwartz contract, and I agree. It's probably a little too much money for someone who's been hurt a little recently, but he's still a good veteran guy who's won a cup, a guy who's been to the top of the mountain. So you gotta respect that. I'm going out and getting him. I really like their blue line. I mean, it's easy. I mean, when you have an expansion draft, it's easy to have a really, really solid blue line. And I think they did a good job of that, even kind of loading up on talent to come with. I know the Dennis Cholowski pick from Detroit, like, he can be a player maybe in a couple of years as well.
Right.
So, yeah, I think they did some good things. They got Wenberg. They got a guy like Marcus Johansson, who seems to be a really good locker room guy. From what I've read, and they've made some decent moves. Like you said, getting Ryan Donato, what better way to, you get taking a guy out of a bad situation and you're not paying him very much, $750. Maybe he starts out on the fourth line, but I still think he can be a 20 goal scorer. If he doesn't show it this year coming up, maybe that's it. But I still think he'd be a surprise, kind of like Vegas had with some of their picks in the expansion.
Yeah, he's kind of like a Jimmy Vesey, where this is it. Like this, Vesey's still unsigned, but they're both college guys that were great in college and then came into the NHL and haven't been as good as they were there. But totally agree about their back end. You look at it. Jamie Alexiak won a Stanley Cup, speaks for himself. Been in 3 Stanley Cup finals. Gio won a Norris Trophy. Maybe not what he once was, but he still is a very effective player. Hayden Fleury, I think, he's the one that intrigues me the most because I think he has a ton of potential and I think he can be a great player in this league. You go to Vince Dunn, Stanley Cup champion in St. Louis. So he's got hardware. Lauzon from Boston. He's a good player too. He's got his problems defensively, but I like him. And then Larson, he gets made fun of because of the Taylor Hall deal, but he is good at what he does. Don't ask him to do too much. He'll be an effective player. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, going by that, is that being that if you were coaching right now, is that your deep pairings, Alexiak, Gio, and then on Larson kind of deal, or did you have a set? I love to do this in my head. I go by and think what are the best pairing for these guys, but do you have something in mind?
I would probably say Larson's definitely on your top pair just because he's a perfect shutdown guy. Like, he's your Jake Muzzin, so to speak, for the Toronto reference. I'd probably go Larson and Gio would concern me a bit because they're both older and not that fast.
Yeah.
Maybe Fleury and Larson.
Yeah.
Alexiak's a better skater than people give him credit for, so he could play with Gio. And then you got Lauzon, or you can go Dunn. Maybe you go Dunn and Larson. And
Yeah,
then
I think Dunn's really gonna have a breakout year
yeah,
this year with
Flurry,
Seattle. He's been going.
Gio, and then Lozon and you could go Susie or whoever you wanted left. But yeah, I think I forgot about Vince Dunn, but yeah, I agree. I think the guy was playing under so many great defensemen in Petrangelo and obviously Parayko in St. Louis. I think he's only scratching the surface and getting a heavier workload. I think he'll be an offensive force for the Kraken.
Yeah, because when you look at that team, I mean, there's no guy on there that's really. I don't think next year is going to scratch 30 points even, except for Vince Dunn. Maybe I think Giordano could possibly do that, but I think Vince Dunn is definitely going to be that top guy, and maybe probably their PP guy when you think about it.
Yeah, and then at the free agent frenzy, it shocked me when they went out and signed Philip Grubauer. But I like that they did it. You need a starting goalie in this league to be competitive. I don't know if he'll be as good as he was in Colorado because he had a hell of a team in front of him, but he's been very good over the last couple of years. And I like their aggressiveness to get a Grubauer and then a Drieger behind him, both guys who have been consistent over the past number of years.
Yeah, I'm never going to be mad at a guy who, gets more money somewhere else than one place because, I mean, he's just battling on himself to basically say he wanted $6 million and he almost got it. So that's, that's good for him. Colorado wasn't willing to give it to him. So I think, do you think there's going to be a lot of heat on him though? When, if Seattle's losing games, it's like, oh, Grubauer sucks now. Like what happened? When in reality, it's just Colorado was such a force that they were winning games.
Yeah, I think for some media people there will be, because it'll be like, well, this guy's supposed to be really good. He got all that money, and then you gotta think, who the hell was playing in front of him? Oh yeah, some really good players, and especially if Colorado continues to do well, and their new acquisition in Nets playing super well, that's kind of like, well, this makes sense. And then Grubauer is on a lesser team, and he's kind of getting exposed a little bit, more nights than not, but. The one good thing is we've talked about, he's not in a great division. So the only problem might be is that he's asked to allow 2 goals or less in a lot of nights. Because I look at their offense, I love Yanni Gourde, but I don't love him as my top line center. I like him as my second, I'm fine with, but first is a lot. Eberle's a third line winger now. Like to me, that's where I see him. I don't see him much more than that. Tanev I love, but again, he's a third line guy. Schwartz, he'll play in your top line, but Donato's a reclamation project. McCann played great with Sid, but who doesn't? Don Skoy, like I just look at their offensive guys, and a lot of them are kind of prove it journeyman type guys.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who really steps up and, kind of if it's maybe it's a group of guys or maybe it's just a couple guys. Maybe, Donskar goes out and does something he's never done before and scores 25. Maybe George Schwartz comes back and, maybe he has a 20-25 goal season. So it'll be interesting to see, or if they just share the sugar and they all just try to get their cookies.
Yeah, no, it should be fun. Like I'm glad that they put them on opening night. I think that's cool to start off their franchise, and only 2 games opening night, which surprised me. It's normally Toronto, Montreal, and then the Battle of Alberta on opening night. So different setup for the NHL this year. Pacific Division will cap it off with the LA Kings, who were very active in the offseason, signing Philip Danault from the Montreal Canadiens to a big 6-year deal, adding Alex Edler, the longtime Vancouver Canuck, adding Victor Arvidsson, Tyler Steenbergen came over. They still have Quentin Byfield. What I think LA can be a sneaky good team this year. Again, it helps that you're in a bad division, but what do you make of LA heading into next season?
Yeah, I kind of dissed them earlier saying that the Ducks would be over them, but I'm looking at the roster and looking what I said. I do think the Kings should top the Ducks and, probably even the Sharks at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think you mentioned before having a guy like Danault helps out Kopitar. He doesn't feel as pressured to take on all the defensive roles that he's been going with. Maybe he has a breakout year. He scores 80, 90 points like he can. The biggest thing for me, Jug, is is Quick staying? I know he's got a year or 2 left of his deal. Do you keep him around a little longer to see if he's going to perform like he used to, or do you kind of cut him off, especially when you got Calvin Peterson there, who seems to be a pretty promising young goalie himself.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely tough because, again, it's finding somebody that would take quick, but also maybe it's a scenario where we talked about it on the pod before. It's a tandem, and you got to just kind of live with Quick's salary cap number. You know what it is. It hurts at times, but Peterson, I think, will get more starts this year than he ever has because he's shown that he can play at the NHL level. And also it's better for Quick not to play 50 plus games because his body breaks down. So if you could get 40 starts from each, that's in a perfect world. That's what you would like to do. No back-to-backs for either goalie. And then you kind of battle it out. Hopefully you can make the playoffs, maybe a wild card team. And then you go from there and you pick a goalie you trust and ride into the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it's a difficult situation. I would know, actually, if I was the GM, I really wouldn't have a definitive answer on what I'd do with Quick if I want to keep him around to the ends where, he was your guy really for that long, and he got you to those couple cups a couple times.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's difficult. A couple of things I did like, a couple guys that I thought needed new paint were Arvidsson and Alex Edler. I mean, Edler came to a great story, but I don't think, his story, I thought his story was done in Vancouver. So I thought he kind of needed that change. Yeah. And I think he's a great veteran to a lot of these young guys. Look at Tobias Bornfoot. Is that his name? The young Swede. Yeah. Be able to, mentor him a little bit and kind of get him prepared for his next role. Arvidsson, he had a pretty bad year last year in Nashville, I'd say. So he kind of needs the change just as much as anybody. I know people were pissed off, aka Phil Forsberg were pissed off in Nashville, just the way it went down. But at the end of the day, if the Kings get a decent goal scorer guy, he's probably going to put in 20. Do you see him as playing with Deneau, or do you put him up there with Kopitar in the first line?
I think they'll probably keep Kopitar and Brown together. They normally like to do that. So that's right winger. You could put him on there. Also, Iafallo is an interesting kid, but I think they'll try to put him at center. But Arvidsson would be good, but he's definitely a goal scorer. So I think maybe you start him with Deneau and hope that Deneau can find some kind of offensive game. Because as much as I love Philip Deneau defensively, his offensive game is non-existent.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a good thing he's probably one of the better defending forwards in the league, because if he wasn't, he'd be a fourth liner, no problem. In my opinion, he just doesn't have the tools that he should to be that to be that great two-way forward.
Yeah. Do you think it was the right decision for Montreal to let him walk?
Yeah. Looking back and looking at some of their moves, I know, now you're like, oh, well, they let KK walk, but they still got Christian Dvorak coming in. So I think that'll kind of replace that. I think things will work out better for Montreal if that was a scenario. I think Deneau is a good player, but with just the way he performed offensively last year, there's no way I'd give him that kind of cash. What about you?
No, I wouldn't have either. I like the player a lot, and I think he was great in the playoffs, but I can't give a guy a 6-year deal of over $5 million for 4 goals. I just can't. And that was over 56. So what, you're going to get 10 over 82? Okay. That's Louis Eriksson territory.
And not to mention you were playing against Ottawa, Vancouver every other night. Like you were in the walkover division. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I do like that they're aggressive. They're getting players of value, not just settling for mediocrity. And I think Iafallo is a big year for him. I think he's got more there. I like that they got
paid, didn't he?
Yep. I'm glad they got Brendan Lemieux too, because he's a tough SOB.
Yeah, well, you think about this. They had Curtis McDermott. He obviously got picked up, and then he got flipped to Colorado. So you kind of need a little bit of that toughness still back in your lineup, and I think Lemieux will be able to provide some of that. Question for you, Jug. Where do you see Quentin Byfield in this lineup, or do you see him out there at all?
I definitely think he'll play, because I look at their Sunrise. I think you got Kopitar for sure, Deneau. I have followed the play at the wing, I think. Kempe, again, they like to flip him. Pick a position. Velarde will likely play, but I think third line center, for Byfield, likely. But one thing I will say is if he's not ready, if you're in training camp and it's even, I don't think he's ready, then don't play him. There's no pressure to win this year. If you make the playoffs, that's a great story in LA. And I do think it's important to them because they know people only show up to hockey in LA when you're competitive and you're going to be a playoff team, because there's a lot of other things in LA that you could be doing. So, but don't force feed the kid. We saw Montreal did it with KK, and his career has not gone exactly to plan so far. So be patient and I think I saw good strides from him down the stretch, and I'm interested to actually watch the LA preseason games because I want to see how he looks and, if he's physically mature. We know he's a big kid, so he should be able to step in, I think sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no, I look forward to watching him. Just where, it was a disappointing season, I thought, for people in that draft class. Lafreniere kind of disappointed a lot of people. Timmy Stu actually did look really good. I don't know what I'm saying there, but yeah, to see someone else step up, maybe that's kind of comes, and then it's kind of like, well, maybe New York made the wrong decision by taking Lafreniere, who was this so-called set in stone first round overall pick.
Yeah, no, this division should be interesting because we expect little. So even if you get something, then that's definitely promising. But Vegas definitely the clear favorite. I think you got LA looks interesting. Teams from Canada, Edmonton's got big expectations. You mentioned last week Calgary's expectations that I don't think they'll be able to live up to. Vancouver is better on paper. We'll see how they can play. So Arizona is a doormat, but should be interesting. Again, training camps open on Monday. Always exciting. Football back in full swing. You got hockey, which will be back, college football. So I will even be less, you can't even reach, you'll be able to reach me less than normal, when that happens. That's my all-time low of my addiction. But I know you're studying the rest of the week, but anything else on the sports calendar that catches your eye this week, Shay, or any big plans that you have this week?
No, just study a bunch so I can watch a little football on Sunday. That's the all-time goal down the stretch for baseball. So I've been catching a lot of these Jays games because they've been hot. So even though I am a natural Dodgers fan, I do have to cheer for the hometown. But no, other than that, not a ton. I do give one shout out to a good friend of the pod, Casey Ward's in a playoff match for golf right now. So he's well, maybe not right now, but he's currently going out of 72 teams. I think he's down to the Sweet 16. So good luck, Casey, if you're listening to this. My golf game is pretty atrocious. I've only broke 100 once this year, which was great. But looking forward to a little fall golf after my exams behind me.
How'd it go with the swing coach?
Good. Yeah, fixed the short game up. Short game's looking real tight right now. So couple more things to go, but I think they'll be shooting consistent 90s here very shortly.
Well, that's good to hear. Happy to hear that. Good luck to Casey. Like you, he's a big Browns fan, so you'll have to gear up for Cleveland, Houston this week. Houston Texans coming off a big victory over the Jaguars. So
I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually scared to see
Tyrod Taylor?
Tyrod Taylor. When his name pops up, it gives me shiver me timbers.
Yeah, he's got a cannon of an arm, that guy, I'll tell you. But yeah, Houston, big win over Urban Meyer and the Jags. So we'll see what comes of that this week. But Shay, I'll talk to you this week, but we'll see you next Wednesday. But from everybody here at the pod, and especially myself, good luck next Tuesday. We know you'll kill it, and we'll talk to you next Wednesday after, and we'll be feeling, just great.
Awesome. Good to hear.
Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next Wednesday to talk everything Breaking Bad, episodes 2 and 3 of season 4. I'll be back tomorrow, and later in the week, I'll be with Ben Murray to talk about week 2 of the NFL season. So gear up for that. Everybody have a great day, and we'll talk soon.